You just push back from the table. The plate is empty. Your body is already drifting toward the couch, the recliner, the remote in your hand. Don't sit down yet. What you do in the next 20 minutes shapes how you age more than the food you just ate. That short window decides whether the meal you enjoyed strengthens you or quietly wears your body down, one day at a time. It got forgotten because comfort sells, and a free habit has no sponsor. Stay with me, and I'll hand you a habit written down more than 400 years ago, and a laboratory proof from 2022 that made scientists sit up straight. I remember standing in my sister's kitchen in Ohio, watching her husband's father push himself up from Sunday dinner and head straight out the back door for a walk, while the rest of us melted into our chairs. I thought he was odd. He was 86, and he outlived nearly everyone who stayed sitting. I didn't understand it then. I understand it now, and I can't stay quiet about it, because I spent about 30 years doing the exact opposite, and I paid for every single one of them. Here is what I got wrong, and maybe what you're getting wrong right now without knowing it. For most of my adult life, the reward for a good meal was the chair. Finish the plate, loosen the belt, drop into the recliner, and let the television do the rest. That felt like rest. That felt earned. It felt like the natural thing a tired body wanted after being fed. But my body was not resting in that chair. It was struggling, because the moment you finish eating, especially anything with bread, rice, potatoes, pasta, or something sweet, the sugar from that food floods into your blood. Within about 15 to 30 minutes, that flood hits its highest point. Doctors call it the blood sugar spike, and that spike is the single biggest thing happening inside you at that exact moment. It is the tide coming in. Now here is the part nobody explained to me for decades. When you sit down after eating, that tide has nowhere to go. Your muscles are still. They are asking for nothing. So the sugar just sits in your blood, high and sharp, and your body has to scramble, pumping out insulin to force it down. That sharp rise and hard crash is what leaves you foggy, sleepy, and hungry again an hour later. Do that 3 times a day, every day, for 30 years, and those spikes stop being a small thing. They become the shape of how you age. I felt it before I ever understood it. The afternoon slump, the heaviness after dinner, the way I needed something sweet at 3 o'clock just to keep my eyes open. I blamed my age. I blamed my job. I never once blamed the chair. But the chair was the problem. And the fix was never a pill or a program or a machine. The fix was a pair of legs in about 10 minutes. Here is the thing that stopped me cold when I first read it. The solution to that afternoon crash, the fatigue, the slow creep of weight and worse, is simply to move your body gently in the 20 minutes right after you eat. Not a workout, not a sweat. A slow, easy walk. And your muscles, once they start moving, do something remarkable. They open up and pull that sugar straight out of your blood to burn as fuel before your body ever has to panic. You don't spike. You don't crash. The tide comes in, and your legs carry it right back out. That is it. That is the whole secret that our grandparents lived by, and we somehow paid people to make us forget. And I do mean our grandparents knew this. This is not some new discovery dressed up as ancient wisdom. This is genuinely old knowledge, and I want to show you exactly how old, because the date surprised even me. There is an old English proverb, and you may have heard a piece of it. After dinner sit a while, after supper walk a mile. It sounds like a cute little rhyme, but it is a health instruction, and it is written down in a book printed in 1607 called The Englishman's Doctor. That book was an English translation of a much older set of health rules from the medical school at Salerno in Italy, a school that was teaching this stuff back in the Middle Ages, around the 1100s. Think about that. More than 400 years ago, in print, ordinary people were being told plainly, do not sink into stillness right after your evening meal. Get up, walk. And they did it because they had no choice and no distraction, and because it plainly worked. The Italians never let go of it. They have a word for it, the passeggiata, the gentle evening stroll after supper through the town square. Whole families, old folks and children, walking slow and easy while their meal settled. It was never really about the socializing, though that was the pleasant part. It was medicine on foot, and they were taking it 365 days a year without calling it medicine at all. Now compare that to how I spent my evenings for 30 years. Dinner, then the couch, then a snack, then bed. And I honestly believed I was being good to myself. I thought I was resting. I was actually doing the one thing almost guaranteed to make every meal cost me more. So how did we go from a whole culture that walked after supper to a whole culture that races to the chair? That is where this stops being a cozy history lesson and starts costing you real money and real years. Because somewhere in the last 70 or so years, we were sold a brand new idea about what rest means. And it was a very profitable idea. Think back to the 1950s and 60s, when the television set moved into the center of the American living room and the recliner chair became the throne in front of it. Dinner stopped being something you walked off and started being something you settled in from. There was even a product built for exactly this, the frozen tray meal you could eat on your lap without leaving your seat. It was literally named after the television. The whole design of the modern evening became eat, then sit, then keep sitting. And here is the quiet part. There is enormous money in you sitting still. A comfortable chair is a product. A television is a product. The snacks you reach for during the crash are products. The second helping is more grocery sales. Even the fog and the fatigue got turned into a sale, because now there is a coffee and an energy drink and a sugary pick-me-up waiting to rescue you from the very slump the chair created. I fell for all of it. And the cost was not just the money on chairs and snacks and coffee, though that added up to real dollars over the years. The bigger cost was invisible, building up spike by spike, meal by meal, while I thought I was relaxing. That is the part that makes me angry now. Not that I was lazy, that I was misled into thinking the harmful thing was the healthy thing. But once I understood it, I wanted the proof. I am a skeptic by nature. I did not want a proverb from 1607. I wanted a number. I wanted to know exactly how much this simple walk was actually worth. And when I found the research, it was even stronger than the old rhyme promised. Let me give you the study that changed how I eat, because this is where the vague old wisdom turns into hard science with real measurements. In 2013, researchers at George Washington University, led by a scientist named Loretta DiPietro, ran a careful experiment and published it in a journal called Diabetes Care. They took older adults who were at risk for the kind of blood sugar problems that come with age, and they compared two things. One group did a single longer walk during the day. The other group did 3 short walks, just 15 minutes each, one after each meal. The results stopped me cold. The short walks taken right after eating controlled blood sugar better than one longer walk did. And the walk after the evening meal, the supper walk, exactly the one that 1607 proverb told people to take, was the most powerful of all. It flattened the dangerous nighttime blood sugar rise in a way the single daily walk simply could not match. 15 minutes, after a meal. That was it. No gym, no special shoes, no cost. And it beat the fancier approach. And other researchers found you don't even need the full 15. Study after study since then has shown that as little as 2 to 5 minutes of light walking after eating already starts blunting that sugar spike. Even standing up instead of sitting helps. The magic is not in the distance or the sweat. The magic is simply in refusing to be still during the exact window when your blood sugar is climbing. Here is the timing that matters, and this is the part I want you to really hold on to. That sugar peak hits somewhere around 30 minutes to an hour after you start eating. So if you get moving in the first 20 minutes, you are already working while the tide is still rising. You meet the wave before it crests. Wait an hour, sink into the chair, and you have missed the whole window. The damage is done before you ever get up. 20 minutes. That is the difference between a meal that ages you and a meal that fuels you. Same food, same plate. Completely different result inside your body, decided entirely by what your legs do next. When I finally started doing this, The change came faster than I expected. The afternoon fog lifted first. Within a couple of weeks, I stopped needing that 3 o'clock sugar hit just to function. The heavy, drugged feeling after dinner faded. I slept better, and over a few months, without changing what I ate at all, my waistband got easier. I did not eat one bite less. I just stopped sitting down at the wrong moment. Nobody profits from you standing up and walking around the block, and that's exactly the kind of buried truth I've spent years trying to dig back up, including in my book. That habit is free. It cannot be packaged. It cannot be sold to you monthly. So it quietly slipped out of the culture, not because it stopped working, but because there was no one with a marketing budget to remind you. If you want to go deeper on this, on how forgotten habits like this one stack together to change how you age, I've written it all out in Reset, Deep Leverage, and the Complete Stack. The details are in the description. I wrote them because this kind of plain, free knowledge deserves to be handed around, not buried. Now, back to the science, because once I understood the history, I wanted the hard proof. 30 years I could have had that. 30 years I handed over to a chair. That is the loss aversion that keeps me talking about this. Because every day you keep doing it the old way is another day quietly taken from you. Now, I know exactly what some of you are thinking right now, because I thought it too. You are thinking, that is fine for people who can just stroll out the door, but I can't. Maybe your knees are shot. Maybe the weather outside is miserable half the year. Maybe you live somewhere with no sidewalk and no safe place to walk. Maybe you use a cane or a walker, or you simply cannot be marching around the block 3 times a day. So this next part is for you specifically. Because the truth is, you do not need to leave your house, and you do not need to walk anywhere at all. I want to give you things you can do this week, in your own home, with nothing you don't already own. Here is the first one, and it is the easiest thing in the world. After you eat, just do not sit down. Stay on your feet and do the dishes. That is it. Washing up, wiping the counter, putting food away, standing at the sink for those 10 minutes, that gentle, upright activity is already pulling sugar out of your blood. Our grandmothers cleared the table and washed up after every meal, on their feet, and they never once thought of it as exercise. It was, though. It was perfectly timed movement in exactly the right window, every single day. Here is the second one. For the worst weather or the worst knees, walk in place. Right there in your kitchen or your living room, in front of that same television, march slow and easy on the spot during the commercials. You do not have to lift your knees high. You do not have to go fast. 10 minutes of easy stepping in place does the job. If standing tires you, hold the back of a sturdy chair while you step. Here is the third one, gentler still. Stand up and put on one song you love. Just sway. Shift your weight foot to foot, move your arms, tidy something, pace the hallway. 3 or 4 minutes of that is already working. The point is never intensity. The point is simply that your muscles are awake and asking for fuel while the sugar is high, instead of both of you going to sleep in the chair together. And here is the fourth. For anyone who truly cannot stand for long, even seated, you can march your feet, pump your legs up and down, rise up onto your toes over and over, press the balls of your feet into the floor. Any repeated movement of the large muscles in your legs helps drain that sugar. Slower and smaller than a walk, yes, but far, far better than stillness. Notice what none of these cost you. Not $1, not one subscription, not one machine gathering dust in the corner, not one specialist. You already own the kitchen, the floor, the chair, and the legs. The only thing standing between you and this is the old habit of sitting down the second the plate is empty, and that habit was never yours to begin with. It was handed to you. Pick one of those 4. Do it after just one meal today, and pay attention to how you feel 2 hours later compared to every other day you dropped into the chair. That single comparison is what turned me from a skeptic into someone who cannot shut up about this. But I promised you something more than a walk. I promised you a laboratory proof from 2022 that made scientists sit up, and this is the one I have been waiting to hand you. because it breaks the last excuse anyone could possibly have. Because someone out there is still saying, I physically cannot move after I eat. I am at a desk. I am in a wheelchair. My body will not do the standing or the stepping. And for years, the honest answer would have been, do your best. But then a discovery came out of a research lab in Texas, and it changes everything. At the University of Houston, a scientist named Mark Hamilton, who has spent his whole career studying what sitting does to the human body, published a study in 2022 in a journal called iScience. And he and his team found something almost nobody knew, hidden in a small muscle in your lower leg, down in the calf, called the soleus muscle. Here is what they discovered. That one small muscle, when you use it in a very specific, gentle way, can burn blood sugar for hours, while you stay seated the entire time, sitting down, not walking, not standing, just sitting in a chair, using this one muscle, and drawing the sugar right out of your blood the whole time. They gave it a name, the soleus push-up. And I want to teach it to you right now, because it costs nothing. And you can do it while you watch this. Sit with your feet flat on the floor, the way you are probably sitting now. Keep the ball of your foot planted on the ground, your toes down. Now slowly raise your heels up as high as they will comfortably go, so you are lifting the back of your foot while the front stays planted. Then let your heels come back down. That is it. Up and down. A slow, easy heel raise while you sit. But here is the trick that makes it work, the part the researchers stressed. It is not a hard clench, and it is not a fast bounce. It is a relaxed, steady, rhythmic lift, over and over, letting that calf muscle do its quiet work without tiring you out. Because this particular muscle is built to keep going for hours without fatigue. It is the muscle that holds you upright all day. So it can gently work away in the background, meal after meal, without ever leaving you sore or worn out. In their study, people doing this simple seated movement saw the blood sugar spike after a meal drop by around half, cut nearly in two, the sharp rise and hard crash flattened into a gentle hill, and the insulin their bodies needed dropped by a large amount too, all from a small heel lift done sitting in a chair. Sit there and do the soleus push-up after your meal, and you are getting a real piece of what the walk gives you without taking a single step. For the person in the wheelchair, for the person stuck at a desk, for the person whose knees have quit, this is the thing that finally puts the medicine back in your reach. Think about the full picture now. A rhyme printed in 1607 told people to walk after supper. The medical school at Salerno was teaching it nearly 1,000 years ago. The Italians kept it alive in the Passeggiata when the rest of us forgot. George Washington University proved with hard numbers in 2013 that 15 minutes after a meal beats a longer walk taken at the wrong time. And in 2022, a lab in Houston found a way to get the same protection out of one small muscle while you sit perfectly still. That knowledge existed the whole time. It never stopped being true. It just stopped being profitable. So it slipped out of the culture while the chairs and the snacks and the energy drinks moved in to fill the space. But it was never lost. It was preserved in an old book, in an Italian evening ritual, in a handful of stubborn researchers who wanted to know why sitting hurts us. And now it is in your hands, tonight, for free. I keep coming back to that 86-year-old man walking out my sister's back door while the rest of us sank into the cushions. He was not doing anything special. He was doing something old. He was doing what people did for hundreds of years before somebody convinced us that the reward for eating was to stop moving. He simply never got the memo that we were all supposed to sit down and stay down. I got that memo. I believed it for 30 years. And the quiet cost of believing it, the fog, the weight, the crashes, the slow wearing down, is the thing I most wish I could take back. You cannot buy those years back at any price. But you can stop the leak today, on your very next meal, and every single one after that. So here is what I want you to carry out of this. The most powerful thing you can do for how you age is not something you swallow and not something you buy. It is the simple refusal to sit down in the 20 minutes after you eat. That window belongs to you. It always did. Somebody just talked you out of it. You are the kind of person who does not like being quietly overcharged for what you could do yourself with your own 2 feet. That is why you are still here. So take it back. Walk after supper like it is 1607. Wash your dishes standing up like your grandmother did. Or sit right there and lift your heels like a lab in Texas proved actually works. Any of them beats the chair. Now I want to hear from you. And be specific, because I read these. Which one are you going to try first at your very next meal? The 10-minute walk, the dishes on your feet, the marching in place, or the soleus heel lift from that chair? Tell me in the comments, and then come back in a week, and tell me how you felt 2 hours after eating. I want the honest report, the good and the bad. And if you believe, like I do, that this kind of plain, free, forgotten knowledge deserves to be dug back up and handed around instead of buried under things we have to pay for, then come along with the rest of us who are recovering it, one habit at a time. Because the next thing I want to show you is just as buried and just as valuable. It is about the single glass of something almost everyone drinks with dinner, and the way it quietly doubles that very sugar spike we just spent all this time learning to flatten. Most people have never heard which drink does it, or the cheap swap our grandparents used instead. I will see you there. This video gave you the overview, but the full after-meal walking routine, timed and measured step by step, is waiting inside the Old Ways Society. And if something isn't clear, ask me directly. A real person answers, me or my team, never a machine. You won't be doing this alone. You belong here. Just point your phone's camera at the code on the screen, and you can cancel any time with one click.